Question 1. Investigation of a company's digital public relations strategy during a sudden product recall, focusing on the optimization of its crisis communication process to ensure compliance with relevant disclosure regulations and ethical standards. Option A. Immediately disseminate a series of urgent social media posts and press releases detailing the recall, without prior review by the legal or compliance departments, to ensure maximum reach and speed. Option B. Issue a brief statement acknowledging a potential issue and promise further details later, while simultaneously engaging in targeted private communications with key influencers to shape the narrative. Option C. Develop a comprehensive communication plan that includes internal verification of facts, consultation with legal and compliance teams for regulatory adherence, and a phased rollout of accurate, compliant messaging across all relevant digital platforms. Option D. Focus all communication efforts on a single, high-visibility platform, providing only partial information to avoid overwhelming the public and to manage the immediate media response. Correct answer is A. Immediately disseminate a series of urgent social media posts and press releases detailing the recall, without prior review by the legal or compliance departments, to ensure maximum reach and speed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for rapid crisis communication with the imperative to adhere to regulatory disclosure requirements and maintain ethical standards in digital public relations. The speed of digital channels can create pressure to release information prematurely, potentially leading to inaccuracies or noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all communications are accurate, timely, and meet legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves a structured process of information verification, stakeholder identification, and message development, all within the established regulatory framework. This ensures that the public relations response is not only effective in managing the crisis, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. Specifically, it prioritizes accuracy and compliance, which are fundamental tenets of professional public relations practice, and are often mandated by regulatory bodies to protect investors and the public. An incorrect approach that bypasses internal legal and compliance review before disseminating information to the public is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes regulatory requirements for accurate and timely disclosure, potentially leading to legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of trust. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and ethical communication standards. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on speed and volume of communication without regard for accuracy or regulatory adherence, is also professionally unsound. While rapid communication is important in a crisis, it must be grounded in verified facts and compliant messaging. This approach risks spreading misinformation, which can exacerbate the crisis and lead to severe consequences. A third incorrect approach, which involves selectively releasing information to certain stakeholders while withholding it from others without a clear, justifiable, and compliant rationale, is ethically problematic and can violate disclosure regulations. Transparency and fairness in communication are crucial for maintaining credibility and adhering to legal obligations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory landscape governing their industry and jurisdiction. This includes identifying all applicable disclosure requirements and ethical guidelines. In a crisis, the immediate steps should be to activate pre-approved crisis communication plans, gather verified information, consult with legal and compliance teams, and then craft messages that are accurate, compliant, and strategically delivered across appropriate digital channels. The process should always prioritize accuracy and regulatory adherence over speed or expediency. Question 2. The risk matrix shows a significant potential for noncompliance with advertising standards and platform guidelines due to the varied nature of sponsored content dissemination across multiple social media platforms. A public relations team is tasked with launching a new product campaign that will utilize Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. They need to determine the most effective and compliant approach to disclosing sponsored content on each platform. Option A. Implement a standardized disclosure hashtag, such as #, at the end of every post across all platforms, regardless of the platform's specific features or user engagement patterns. Option B. Use a combination of subtle visual cues and brief mentions within the content body on Instagram and Facebook, assuming that users will notice and understand the sponsored nature of the post through context. Option C. Develop platform-specific disclosure strategies, utilizing prominent hashtags or clear textual statements on Instagram and Facebook, concise and visible disclosures on Twitter, and professional, clearly labeled sponsored posts on LinkedIn, ensuring all disclosures are easily identifiable by the target audience. Option D. Rely on the inherent understanding that users on social media are aware that content can be sponsored, and therefore, no explicit disclosure is necessary beyond the brand's profile information. The correct answer is A. Implement a standardized disclosure hashtag, such as #ad, at the end of every post across all platforms, regardless of the platform's specific features or user engagement patterns. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of how different social media platforms operate and the varying regulatory expectations associated with them, particularly concerning the disclosure of sponsored content and the potential for misinformation. The core challenge lies in balancing the desire for authentic engagement with the imperative to comply with advertising standards and platform-specific rules. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all communications are transparent, accurate, and adhere to the spirit and letter of relevant regulations. The correct approach involves a comprehensive strategy that acknowledges the distinct characteristics of each platform. This means tailoring content and disclosure methods to suit the user experience and the platform's guidelines. For instance, on visually driven platforms like Instagram, clear visual cues or prominent hashtags are essential for disclosure. On professional networks like LinkedIn, the tone and nature of sponsored content require a more formal and transparent approach. This strategy is correct because it prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical communication by ensuring that audiences are not misled about the nature of the content they are consuming. It aligns with the principles of advertising standards that mandate clear identification of paid promotions, thereby fostering trust and maintaining the integrity of public relations efforts. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing reach, without considering platform-specific disclosure requirements, would fail to meet regulatory obligations. For example, burying disclosure hashtags deep within a lengthy caption on Instagram or using ambiguous language on Twitter could be deemed insufficient by advertising standards bodies, leading to potential penalties or reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that treats all platforms identically, applying a single disclosure method across diverse platforms, would also be problematic. This is because what constitutes adequate disclosure on a text-heavy platform like Twitter might be entirely ineffective on a visually dominated platform like TikTok, where users consume content rapidly. Such a failure to adapt disclosure mechanisms to the platform's format and user behavior risks misleading the audience and violating advertising regulations that emphasize clarity and prominence of sponsored content. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the target audience and the specific social media platforms being utilized. This should be followed by a detailed review of the relevant advertising standards and platform-specific guidelines. The next step involves developing a content strategy that integrates clear and conspicuous disclosure mechanisms tailored to each platform's unique characteristics and user expectations. Finally, ongoing monitoring and evaluation are crucial to ensure continued compliance and to adapt strategies as platform policies and regulatory landscapes evolve. Question 3. The efficiency study reveals that a digital public relations firm is developing a social media strategy for a new sustainable fashion brand. The firm needs to define its goals, objectives, and target audience. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical best practices for digital public relations? Option A. Develop a content calendar filled with aesthetically pleasing images and short, catchy slogans, with the main goal being to increase follower count, without specific consideration for the audience's values or the regulatory requirements for advertising claims. Option B. Focus exclusively on maximizing reach and impressions by using trending hashtags and influencer collaborations, with the primary objective being to generate as much buzz as possible, regardless of the audience's specific interests or the accuracy of the brand's sustainability messaging. Option C. Conduct in-depth market research to identify specific demographic and psychographic profiles of environmentally conscious consumers interested in fashion, and then set smart objectives for engagement and website traffic that directly support the brand's mission of promoting sustainable practices, ensuring all content is factually accurate regarding sustainability claims. Option D. Define broad, aspirational goals for brand awareness and customer loyalty, and then create content that is visually appealing and broadly shared across all major social media platforms, assuming the target audience is anyone interested in fashion. The correct answer is D. Define broad, aspirational goals for brand awareness and customer loyalty, and then create content that is visually appealing and broadly shared across all major social media platforms, assuming the target audience is anyone interested in fashion. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a PR practitioner to balance ambitious business goals with the ethical and regulatory obligations of digital communication, specifically concerning social media strategy development. The challenge lies in ensuring that the defined objectives are not only measurable and achievable, but also align with the target audience's expectations and the prevailing regulatory landscape, which in the context of digital public relations certification often implies adherence to consumer protection laws, advertising standards, and data privacy regulations. Careful judgment is required to avoid misleading claims, ensure transparency, and maintain audience trust, all while striving to meet performance metrics. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the target audience's demographics, psychographics, and online behavior, coupled with the development of smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound objectives that directly support overarching business goals. This approach is professionally sound because it grounds the social media strategy in data-driven insights and a clear, actionable framework. Regulatory justification stems from the need for transparency and accuracy in all public communications. For instance, in many jurisdictions, misleading advertising or unsubstantiated claims on social media can lead to regulatory action and reputational damage. Ethical justification lies in respecting the audience by providing relevant content and engaging in honest communication, fostering genuine relationships rather than manipulative tactics. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on broad, aspirational goals without defining specific, measurable objectives fails to provide a clear roadmap for execution and evaluation. This can lead to wasted resources and an inability to demonstrate ROI. But more critically, it can result in communications that are unfocused and potentially misaligned with regulatory requirements for clear and truthful messaging. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes engagement metrics, likes, shares above all else, without considering the alignment of these metrics with actual business objectives or the target audience's needs, is also professionally flawed. While engagement is important, it can be superficial if it doesn't translate into meaningful outcomes. Ethically, this can lead to the creation of content that is sensationalized or misleading to drive clicks, potentially violating principles of honesty and integrity. Regulatory concerns arise if the pursuit of engagement leads to the dissemination of unverified information or deceptive practices. A third incorrect approach that neglects to define or understand the target audience, opting instead for a one-size-fits-all content strategy, is also problematic. This can lead to irrelevant content that fails to resonate, resulting in poor performance. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, it can also lead to unintended consequences, such as targeting vulnerable groups inappropriately or failing to provide necessary disclaimers, which could have legal ramifications depending on the jurisdiction's advertising and consumer protection laws. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the overarching business objectives. Second, conduct in-depth research to understand the target audience. Third, translate business objectives into smart social media objectives that are relevant to the audience. Fourth, develop content and engagement strategies that are ethical, transparent, and compliant with all applicable regulations. Finally, establish clear metrics for evaluation and be prepared to adapt the strategy based on performance data and evolving regulatory landscapes. Question 4. When evaluating the effectiveness of a digital public relations campaign's stakeholder engagement strategy, which approach best demonstrates a commitment to building authentic relationships and adhering to professional ethical standards within the UK regulatory framework? Option A. prioritizing engagement with influencers who have the largest social media followings, regardless of their direct relevance to the campaign's core message. Option B, developing a comprehensive stakeholder map that segments audiences based on their influence, interest, and potential impact, and then crafting bespoke communication plans for each segment, informed by ongoing feedback and analysis. Option C, focusing solely on metrics that indicate immediate engagement, such as likes and shares, without considering the long-term impact on stakeholder perception and relationship quality. Option D, relying on broad, one-size-fits-all digital content that is disseminated across all platforms, assuming that a wide reach equates to effective engagement. The correct answer is A, prioritizing engagement with influencers who have the largest social media followings, regardless of their direct relevance to the campaign's core message. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because digital public relations requires navigating a complex web of stakeholders with diverse interests and varying levels of influence. Effectively identifying and managing these stakeholders is crucial for building trust, mitigating risks, and achieving campaign objectives. The challenge lies in moving beyond superficial identification to a nuanced understanding of each stakeholder's motivations, communication preferences, and potential impact on the organization's reputation. Careful judgment is required to prioritize engagement efforts and tailor communication strategies to foster positive relationships, especially in the fast-paced and often fragmented digital landscape. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven process of stakeholder identification and segmentation, followed by the development of tailored engagement strategies. This approach prioritizes understanding the unique needs and perspectives of each stakeholder group, enabling the development of authentic and impactful communication. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this aligns with principles of transparency, accountability, and responsible communication. For instance, under the UK's Advertising Standards Authority, ASAG guidelines and the Public Relations and Communications Association, PRCA Professional Charter, public relations practitioners are expected to be truthful, accurate, and to avoid misleading communications. A thorough stakeholder analysis ensures that communications are relevant and respectful to all parties, thereby upholding these standards. Building relationships based on mutual understanding and respect is fundamental to ethical practice and long-term reputation management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on easily accessible or loudest voices in the digital space fails to account for the full spectrum of stakeholders, including those who may be less vocal but hold significant influence or are disproportionately affected by the organization's actions. This can lead to overlooking critical perspectives, resulting in misinformed strategies and potential reputational damage. Ethically, this approach can be seen as a failure to engage with all relevant parties, potentially leading to accusations of bias or a lack of inclusivity. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes broad, generic messaging over tailored communication neglects the importance of individual stakeholder needs and preferences. In the digital realm, generic messages are often perceived as impersonal and ineffective, failing to resonate with specific audience segments. This can lead to disengagement and a breakdown in communication, undermining the goal of building strong relationships. From a regulatory perspective, while not always a direct violation, it can indirectly lead to issues if the generic message is not sufficiently nuanced to avoid misinterpretation by certain stakeholder groups, potentially contravening guidelines on clarity and accuracy. A further incorrect approach that focuses only on immediate feedback or short-term engagement metrics without considering the long-term implications for stakeholder relationships is also professionally unsound. Digital public relations is about building sustainable relationships, not just achieving fleeting engagement. Prioritizing short-term gains over long-term trust can lead to a transactional approach that erodes credibility. This can have ethical implications if it leads to manipulative tactics or a disregard for the ongoing impact on stakeholders. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous cycle of research, analysis, strategy development, implementation, and evaluation. Professionals should begin by thoroughly researching the stakeholder landscape, utilizing a variety of tools and methods to identify all relevant groups. This should be followed by a deep analysis of each stakeholder's interests, influence, and communication preferences. Based on this analysis, tailored engagement strategies should be developed, ensuring that communication is transparent, accurate, and respectful. Implementation should be monitored closely, with a focus on building genuine relationships. Finally, regular evaluation of the effectiveness of these strategies is crucial, allowing for adjustments and continuous improvement in stakeholder management. This iterative process ensures that digital public relations efforts are both effective and ethically sound, adhering to relevant regulatory frameworks and professional standards. Question 5. The audit findings indicate a significant discrepancy between the organization's publicly stated commitment to transparent digital communication and the actual execution of its social media campaigns, particularly concerning the disclosure of sponsored content and the handling of user-generated feedback. Which of the following approaches best addresses these findings in accordance with the Digital Public Relations Certification Regulatory Framework? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of all digital PR activities, cross-referencing them with the organization's strategic objectives and the specific disclosure and engagement guidelines outlined in the Digital Public Relations Certification Regulatory Framework, to develop a revised compliance strategy. Option B. Immediately launch a new, aggressive social media campaign to regain positive public perception, deferring a detailed review of current practices until after the campaign concludes. Option C. Acknowledge the findings in an internal memo, but advise that the current digital PR practices are industry standard and require no immediate corrective action. Option D. Implement a new social media management platform to streamline content scheduling and engagement, assuming this will automatically resolve the identified disclosure and feedback handling issues. Correct answer is B. Immediately launch a new, aggressive social media campaign to regain positive public perception, deferring a detailed review of current practices until after the campaign concludes. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a significant disconnect between the organization's stated digital public relations strategy and its actual implementation across various platforms. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a PR professional to not only identify the strategic misalignment, but also to propose a course of action that is both effective in achieving PR objectives and compliant with the relevant regulatory framework for the Digital Public Relations Certification exam. The challenge lies in balancing the need for agile digital communication with the imperative of adhering to established guidelines, ensuring transparency, and maintaining stakeholder trust. Careful judgment is required to navigate the nuances of digital engagement while upholding professional standards. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of existing digital PR activities against the organization's strategic goals and the established regulatory framework. This includes assessing content accuracy, disclosure practices, engagement protocols, and data privacy considerations. By prioritizing a data-driven, compliant, and strategically aligned revision of digital PR efforts, the professional demonstrates a commitment to ethical practice and effective communication. This approach is right because it directly addresses the audit's findings by proposing concrete steps to rectify the identified issues. It aligns with the principles of responsible digital communication, emphasizing transparency, accuracy, and adherence to the specific regulatory framework governing digital public relations, thereby safeguarding the organization's reputation and ensuring compliance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing social media output without addressing the underlying strategic and compliance issues fails to tackle the root cause of the problem. This would likely exacerbate existing issues and could lead to further regulatory breaches or reputational damage, as it prioritizes quantity over quality and compliance. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing new digital tools without a thorough review of current practices and their alignment with strategy and regulations is also problematic. This could lead to wasted resources and the potential for new compliance risks if the tools are not used appropriately or if they introduce new data handling concerns. Finally, an approach that dismisses the audit findings as minor operational details and proposes no significant changes ignores the potential for serious reputational and legal consequences, demonstrating a lack of professional diligence and a failure to uphold the standards expected within the digital public relations field. Professionals should adopt a systematic decision-making framework when faced with such audit findings. This framework should begin with a thorough understanding of the audit scope and implications. Next, It involves a detailed assessment of current digital PR activities against both strategic objectives and the specific regulatory framework. This assessment should identify gaps, risks, and opportunities. Based on this analysis, a prioritized action plan should be developed, focusing on corrective measures that ensure compliance, strategic alignment, and ethical practice. Continuous monitoring and evaluation are crucial to ensure the effectiveness of implemented changes and to adapt to the evolving digital landscape and regulatory environment. Question 6. Analysis of a PR practitioner's strategy for monitoring online conversations about a new product launch, where the practitioner is considering using advanced analytics to identify influential voices and potential sentiment shifts, but is also aware of the need to adhere to data privacy regulations and ethical guidelines for public relations. Which of the following approaches best balances trend identification with responsible social listening practices? Option A. Focusing exclusively on negative comments and complaints to identify potential crises, without considering the overall sentiment or positive feedback, and then directly engaging with individuals who express dissatisfaction to offer them personalized incentives to change their public opinion. Option B. Employing web scraping techniques to collect all mentions of the product across various forums and blogs, and then attempting to link these mentions to individual user profiles to understand their personal motivations and potential influence. Option C. Purchasing third-party lists of individuals who have previously expressed interest in similar products, and using social listening tools to track their specific conversations about the new launch, with the aim of tailoring direct marketing messages based on their perceived vulnerabilities. Option D. Utilizing publicly available social media data and sentiment analysis tools to identify broad themes, emerging topics, and general sentiment trends related to the product launch, while ensuring no personally identifiable information is collected or stored beyond what is publicly shared and necessary for trend aggregation. The correct answer is D. Utilizing publicly available social media data and sentiment analysis tools to identify broad themes, emerging topics, and general sentiment trends related to the product launch, while ensuring no personally identifiable information is collected or stored beyond what is publicly shared and necessary for trend aggregation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a PR practitioner to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of social listening, while simultaneously identifying emerging trends that could impact a client's reputation. The challenge lies in balancing proactive trend identification with the responsible and compliant use of data, particularly when that data might involve public sentiment that could be sensitive or lead to unintended consequences if mishandled. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the insights gained are actionable, ethical, and do not violate any privacy or data protection regulations. The correct approach involves a systematic and ethical process of social listening. This begins with clearly defining the objectives of the listening campaign, ensuring they align with the client's business goals and ethical standards. It then moves to selecting appropriate, publicly available data sources and employing tools that respect user privacy and terms of service. The analysis focuses on identifying patterns, sentiment shifts, and emerging topics relevant to the client's industry or brand, without engaging in intrusive surveillance or the collection of personally identifiable information beyond what is publicly shared and necessary for trend analysis. This approach is justified by regulatory frameworks that emphasize responsible data handling and ethical PR practices, such as those that might be guided by professional bodies like the PRCA in the UK, which stress transparency, accuracy, and avoiding misrepresentation. The focus is on understanding public discourse, not on exploiting individual data. An incorrect approach that involves scraping private user data or attempting to de-anonymize public posts would fail ethically and potentially legally. This violates principles of privacy and data protection, as it goes beyond observing public conversations to actively seeking out and potentially misusing personal information. Such actions could contravene data protection laws like the UK GDPR, which mandates lawful and fair processing of personal data. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on negative sentiment without considering context or potential for constructive engagement, could lead to misinformed strategic decisions and damage the client's reputation through reactive, poorly considered responses. This lacks professional judgment and could be seen as unprofessional or even manipulative. A third incorrect approach, using insights from social listening to directly target or manipulate individuals based on their public statements, would be a severe ethical breach and could also have legal ramifications under consumer protection or data misuse regulations. It moves from observation to exploitation, which is contrary to ethical PR principles. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance at every stage of social listening. This involves establishing clear ethical guidelines for data collection and analysis, conducting regular audits of listening practices, and ensuring that all tools and methodologies are compliant with relevant data protection laws and professional codes of conduct. When in doubt, it is always best to err on the side of caution and seek legal or ethical counsel. The goal is to derive actionable insights from public discourse in a way that benefits the client while respecting the privacy and rights of individuals. Question 7. The evaluation methodology shows that a digital public relations campaign for a new health supplement is being developed. The client is eager to emphasize the supplement's purported benefits, but preliminary internal research indicates that, while promising, the long-term efficacy and potential side effects require further extensive study. The PR team is tasked with crafting initial public statements and social media content. Which approach best defines the core principles, ethics, and values of public relations in this scenario? Option A. Emphasize the supplement's revolutionary potential and use strong, assertive language about its benefits, suggesting that further research is merely a formality to confirm what is already evident. Option B. Develop messaging that clearly communicates the preliminary nature of the research, outlines the areas of ongoing study, and transparently states that long-term efficacy and potential side effects are still being investigated, while still conveying the potential benefits based on current understanding. Option C. Create content that focuses on the client's commitment to innovation and scientific advancement, without directly addressing the specific findings or the ongoing research into efficacy and side effects. Option D. Focus on the positive preliminary findings, using compelling testimonials and highlighting the supplement's potential to improve well-being, while deferring detailed scientific data to a later stage when more comprehensive results are available. The correct answer is D. Focus on the positive preliminary findings, using compelling testimonials and highlighting the supplement's potential to improve well-being, while deferring detailed scientific data to a later stage when more comprehensive results are available. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a PR practitioner to navigate the delicate balance between promoting a client's product and upholding ethical communication standards, particularly in the context of digital platforms where information spreads rapidly and can be easily misinterpreted. The practitioner must exercise careful judgment to ensure that all public statements are truthful, accurate, and avoid misleading the public, which is a cornerstone of professional public relations practice. The correct approach involves proactively addressing potential concerns by providing clear, factual information about the product's development and testing, and transparently acknowledging any limitations or ongoing research. This aligns with the core principles of public relations, emphasizing honesty, accuracy, and transparency. Ethically, this approach adheres to the fundamental value of public trust, ensuring that stakeholders are not deceived. It also reflects a commitment to responsible communication, which is crucial for maintaining the long-term credibility of both the practitioner and the client. By focusing on factual reporting and open communication, the practitioner builds trust and avoids the pitfalls of misinformation. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on highlighting positive aspects without acknowledging potential concerns or providing context is ethically flawed. This can lead to misleading the public and eroding trust, violating the ethical obligation to be truthful and accurate. Such an approach risks misrepresenting the product's capabilities or safety, which can have serious consequences for consumers and the client's reputation. Another incorrect approach that involves downplaying or omitting any information that might raise questions is also professionally unacceptable. This constitutes a failure in transparency and can be seen as an attempt to manipulate public perception rather than inform it. It violates the ethical principle of providing full and fair disclosure, which is essential for informed decision-making by the public. A further incorrect approach that relies on vague or unsubstantiated claims without providing concrete evidence or data is also problematic. This lacks the integrity and accountability expected of public relations professionals. It fails to meet the ethical standard of providing accurate and verifiable information, potentially leading to public skepticism and damage to the client's reputation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the information to be communicated, considering its potential impact on various stakeholders. Professionals should prioritize truthfulness, accuracy, and transparency in all communications. They should also consider the ethical implications of their messaging, ensuring it aligns with established professional codes of conduct and values. When in doubt, seeking guidance from senior colleagues or professional bodies can help ensure adherence to ethical and regulatory standards. Question 8. System analysis indicates that a digital public relations practitioner is tasked with enhancing the online presence of a client. The practitioner is considering two primary strategies for their client's website. One that heavily focuses on technical SEO elements and keyword density to maximize search engine rankings, potentially at the expense of intuitive navigation and clear content, and another that prioritizes a seamless user experience, accessibility for all users, and clear, factual content with SEO integrated naturally. Considering the regulatory framework for digital communications and advertising in the UK, which approach is most aligned with professional and ethical obligations? Option A. Prioritizing technical SEO and keyword density to achieve higher search engine rankings, even if it compromises user experience and content clarity. Option B. Employing aggressive link-building tactics and paid placements to artificially inflate website authority and traffic, disregarding content quality and user experience. Option C. Focusing solely on creating visually appealing content without significant consideration for SEO or user navigation, assuming organic reach will suffice. Option D. Implementing a user-centric design that ensures ease of navigation, accessibility for all users, and clear, factual content, while integrating SEO best practices naturally. Correct answer is A. Prioritizing technical SEO and keyword density to achieve higher search engine rankings, even if it compromises user experience and content clarity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a digital public relations practitioner must balance the technical requirements of website optimization for search engines with the fundamental ethical and regulatory obligation to provide clear, accurate, and accessible information to the public. Over-optimizing for search engines without considering user experience or accessibility can lead to misleading content, exclusion of certain user groups, and potential breaches of consumer protection regulations. The challenge lies in achieving visibility without compromising integrity or inclusivity. The correct approach involves a holistic strategy that integrates user-friendliness and SEO optimization. This means designing a website that is easy to navigate, loads quickly, is accessible to users with disabilities, adhering to guidelines like WCAG, and presents clear, truthful information. SEO is then layered onto this foundation, ensuring that relevant keywords are used naturally within high-quality content, meta descriptions are accurate and informative, and the site structure supports search engine crawling. This approach aligns with regulatory frameworks that emphasize transparency, consumer protection, and fair competition, such as those overseen by the Advertising Standards Authority, ASA, in the UK, which prohibits misleading advertising and requires clear disclosure. It also reflects ethical PR principles of honesty and public interest. An incorrect approach that prioritizes SEO keywords above all else, leading to keyword stuffing, jargon-filled content, or a confusing user interface, fails to meet regulatory expectations for clarity and truthfulness. This could be seen as misleading advertising under ASA guidelines, potentially leading to sanctions. Furthermore, neglecting accessibility for users with disabilities, such as those relying on screen readers, violates ethical principles of inclusivity and may contravene broader equality legislation. Another incorrect approach might involve using deceptive tactics like cloaking, showing different content to search engines than to users, which is a direct violation of search engine guidelines and can be considered a form of misrepresentation, undermining trust, and potentially leading to penalties. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with understanding the target audience and their needs, followed by an assessment of regulatory requirements and ethical considerations. Website optimization should then be approached as a means to enhance the delivery of valuable, accessible, and truthful information rather than an end in itself. This involves cross-functional collaboration with web developers and accessibility experts, ensuring that SEO strategies are implemented ethically and effectively, and that user experience and regulatory compliance are paramount throughout the design and content creation process. Question 9. Research into the effectiveness of paid social media advertising for a new health supplement reveals that the marketing team is eager to launch campaigns highlighting significant, rapid weight loss results. The team has gathered anecdotal testimonials and internal data suggesting these results are achievable for some users. However, they have not conducted independent, peer-reviewed studies to substantiate these claims. The primary goal is to maximize click-through rates and conversions within a tight budget. Which of the following approaches is most aligned with regulatory frameworks and ethical best practices for running effective paid social media advertising campaigns in this context? Option A. Developing ad campaigns that focus on the general benefits of the supplement for overall wellness, using carefully worded disclaimers about individual results, and prioritizing ad creative that is visually appealing and broadly relatable to the target demographic. Option B. Delaying campaign launch until independent, peer-reviewed clinical trials can be completed to definitively prove the claimed weight loss results, while in the interim, running broader brand awareness campaigns focused on the supplement's ingredients and general health benefits. Option C. Proceeding with ad campaigns that highlight the rapid weight loss results, but including prominent, easily understandable disclaimers that clearly state the results are not typical and may not be achieved by all users, and ensuring all claims are directly supported by the available internal data. Option D. Launching ad campaigns that feature the most compelling anecdotal testimonials and internal data, emphasizing the speed and extent of weight loss, while ensuring the ad copy is engaging and designed to drive immediate clicks. The correct answer is D. Launching ad campaigns that feature the most compelling anecdotal testimonials and internal data, emphasizing the speed and extent of weight loss, while ensuring the ad copy is engaging and designed to drive immediate clicks. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing aggressive campaign performance with strict adherence to advertising standards and consumer protection regulations. The pressure to achieve high ROI on paid social media advertising can tempt practitioners to employ tactics that, while potentially effective in the short term, risk misleading consumers or violating regulatory guidelines. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all claims are substantiated, transparent, and do not exploit vulnerabilities. The correct approach involves meticulously verifying all claims made in the ad copy and creative assets against available evidence before launching the campaign. This proactive due diligence is crucial for demonstrating compliance with advertising standards that mandate truthfulness and substantiation. Specifically, in the context of digital advertising, regulatory bodies often require that any claims of efficacy, superiority, or specific benefits be backed by credible, objective evidence. This approach ensures that the campaign is not only effective, but also ethically sound and legally compliant, thereby protecting both the brand's reputation and consumer trust. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on optimizing ad spend without verifying claims is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a direct violation of regulations requiring truth in advertising and prohibits misleading representations. For example, making unsubstantiated claims about product performance or benefits, even if they drive clicks, can lead to regulatory action, fines, and significant damage to brand reputation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes engagement metrics over transparency, such as using deceptive clickbait headlines or undisclosed sponsored content, also fails to meet ethical and regulatory standards. This erodes consumer trust and can be seen as manipulative, violating principles of fair advertising practices. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a thorough review of all campaign elements against relevant advertising codes and consumer protection laws. This involves a multi-stage process. First, understanding the target audience and the platform's advertising policies. Second, critically evaluating all proposed claims for accuracy and substantiation. Third, ensuring clear disclosure of any sponsored content or material relationships. And finally, establishing a robust monitoring system to identify and address any potential issues post-launch. This systematic approach ensures that effectiveness is achieved through legitimate and ethical means, rather than through deceptive or non-compliant practices. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that a significant portion of consumers form their perception of a brand based on its online presence and interactions. A digital public relations professional is tasked with developing a strategy to build and protect their client's brand reputation in this environment. Considering the need for both long-term growth and immediate risk mitigation, which of the following approaches represents the most effective and ethically sound strategy? Option A. Adopt a passive approach, relying on traditional public relations methods and assuming that positive brand perception will naturally translate to the digital space without active management. Option B. Focus primarily on rapid response mechanisms to address any negative mentions or emerging issues online, without significant investment in proactive content creation or community building. Option C. Prioritize aggressive promotional campaigns and influencer marketing to drive immediate brand awareness, with minimal emphasis on monitoring or responding to organic online sentiment. Option D. Implement a comprehensive strategy that combines consistent creation of valuable, authentic content and proactive engagement with online communities, alongside robust social listening tools and predefined crisis communication protocols. The correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive strategy that combines consistent creation of valuable, authentic content and proactive engagement with online communities, alongside robust social listening tools and predefined crisis communication protocols. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in digital public relations, balancing proactive reputation building with reactive crisis management in a highly visible and rapidly evolving digital landscape. The challenge lies in discerning the most effective and ethically sound strategy when faced with both opportunities to enhance brand perception and potential threats to that perception. Professionals must navigate the complexities of online sentiment, the speed of information dissemination, and the need for authentic engagement, all while adhering to regulatory frameworks and ethical best practices. The pressure to respond quickly can sometimes lead to impulsive decisions that may not align with long-term reputation goals or legal requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a dual strategy that prioritizes proactive reputation building through consistent, authentic engagement and the creation of valuable content, while simultaneously establishing robust monitoring systems and predefined crisis communication protocols. This approach is right because it acknowledges that reputation is built over time through sustained positive interactions and demonstrates a commitment to transparency and value. Proactive content creation and engagement foster trust and goodwill, making the brand more resilient during challenging times. The establishment of monitoring and crisis protocols ensures that any negative sentiment or emerging crisis can be identified and addressed swiftly and effectively, minimizing potential damage. This aligns with best practices in digital public relations, which emphasize authenticity, transparency, and preparedness. From a regulatory perspective, this approach helps ensure compliance with advertising standards and consumer protection laws by promoting truthful and non-misleading communications. Ethically, it upholds the principle of responsible communication and stakeholder engagement. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on reactive crisis management without a proactive strategy is insufficient because it treats reputation as something to be defended rather than actively cultivated. This approach can lead to a perception of the brand as constantly in damage control, eroding trust and making it harder to build positive sentiment. It fails to leverage the opportunities for positive brand building and can be perceived as inauthentic if engagement only occurs during crises. Prioritizing aggressive promotional content without a strong foundation of authentic engagement and monitoring is also problematic. While it might generate short-term buzz, it can lead to a perception of insincerity or a focus on sales over genuine connection. If negative sentiment arises, the brand will lack the established trust and goodwill to mitigate the impact effectively. This can also lead to accusations of misleading advertising if the promotional content is not entirely accurate or is perceived as overly persuasive. Ignoring online sentiment and focusing only on traditional PR methods is a significant failure in the digital age. The digital space is a primary channel for public discourse about brands. Failing to monitor and engage with this sentiment means missing crucial opportunities to address concerns, correct misinformation, and build relationships. It also leaves the brand vulnerable to reputational damage that can escalate rapidly without intervention. This approach disregards the fundamental shift in how brands are perceived and discussed in the contemporary media landscape. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a strategic framework that integrates proactive reputation building with robust risk management. This involves continuous environmental scanning to understand public perception, identifying key stakeholders and their concerns, and developing authentic communication strategies that deliver value. Simultaneously, establishing clear protocols for monitoring online conversations, identifying potential crises, and executing pre-approved communication plans is essential. This balanced approach ensures that reputation is not only protected, but also continuously enhanced through genuine engagement and preparedness. Question 11. Comparative studies suggest that organizations often face challenges in managing their social media presence effectively. Considering the potential for reputational damage and regulatory noncompliance, which of the following approaches best aligns with a proactive and responsible social media strategy? Option A. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework to identify potential threats, developing clear social media policies and guidelines, and establishing robust monitoring and crisis communication protocols. Option B. Encouraging the creation and sharing of viral content, even if it involves unverified information or ambiguous promotional disclosures. Option C. Prioritizing rapid content dissemination and engagement metrics above all else, with minimal pre-publication review. Option D. Adopting a reactive approach, addressing issues only as they arise and focusing on damage control after negative events have occurred. The correct answer is C. Prioritizing rapid content dissemination and engagement metrics above all else, with minimal pre-publication review. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing proactive social media engagement with the potential for unforeseen reputational damage and regulatory scrutiny. The rapid and often unmoderated nature of social media platforms means that a misstep can have immediate and widespread consequences. Careful judgment is required to anticipate risks, implement appropriate safeguards, and respond effectively to any issues that arise. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats to the organization's reputation and regulatory compliance on social media. This includes evaluating the likelihood and impact of various scenarios, such as misinformation, negative sentiment, data breaches, or noncompliance with advertising standards. Based on this assessment, a robust social media policy should be developed and implemented, outlining clear guidelines for content creation, engagement, crisis communication, and employee conduct. Regular training for all personnel involved in social media management is crucial to ensure understanding and adherence to these policies. Furthermore, continuous monitoring of social media channels allows for early detection of potential issues, enabling swift and appropriate mitigation strategies. This proactive and systematic approach minimizes the likelihood of significant harm and ensures adherence to relevant regulations and ethical standards. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on maximizing engagement and reach without a corresponding emphasis on risk mitigation. This might involve encouraging rapid content deployment without adequate review processes, or failing to establish clear protocols for handling negative comments or potential crises. Such an approach risks exposing the organization to reputational damage, legal liabilities, and breaches of regulatory requirements, such as those governing advertising disclosures or data privacy. Another incorrect approach is to adopt a purely reactive stance, waiting for problems to emerge before addressing them. This could involve only responding to negative feedback after it has gained traction or only implementing policies after a breach has occurred. This lack of foresight and preparedness significantly increases the potential for harm and demonstrates a failure to meet professional obligations for due diligence and risk management. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed and virality over accuracy and compliance is also professionally unacceptable. This might involve sharing unverified information or engaging in promotional activities that do not clearly disclose sponsored content, thereby violating advertising standards and potentially misleading the public. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with identifying all potential social media risks, assessing their severity, and prioritizing them. Subsequently, Appropriate control measures, including policies, training, and monitoring systems, should be developed and implemented. Regular review and adaptation of these measures are essential to address evolving social media landscapes and regulatory requirements. Question 12. Cost-benefit analysis shows that investing in creating highly engaging, informative blog posts and social media updates that subtly highlight a client's product benefits without explicit promotional language offers a high return on engagement. However, a competitor has recently faced ASA sanctions for failing to clearly disclose sponsored content. Considering the UK regulatory framework and professional ethical guidelines, which approach to content marketing best balances audience value with compliance? Option A. Develop content that is primarily focused on entertainment value, with minimal emphasis on product benefits, and avoid any mention of sponsorship to maintain a purely editorial perception. Option B. Focus on creating content that is inherently valuable and informative to the audience, ensuring any commercial intent or sponsorship is clearly and conspicuously disclosed according to ASA guidelines and the CIPR Code of Conduct. Option C. Create content that makes strong, unsubstantiated claims about product efficacy to generate immediate interest, relying on the assumption that the audience will overlook the lack of explicit promotional disclosure. Option D. Prioritize creating content that is highly engaging and subtly promotes product benefits, assuming that the lack of explicit promotional language will satisfy regulatory requirements as long as the content is informative. The correct answer is B. Focus on creating content that is inherently valuable and informative to the audience, ensuring any commercial intent or sponsorship is clearly and conspicuously disclosed according to ASA guidelines and the CIPR Code of Conduct. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a PR professional to balance the strategic imperative of creating valuable content for audience engagement with the absolute necessity of adhering to the UK's Advertising Standards Authority, ASA guidelines, and the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, CIPR, Code of Conduct. The risk lies in inadvertently misrepresenting a product or service, or failing to disclose commercial intent, which can lead to reputational damage for the client and disciplinary action for the practitioner. The digital environment's rapid dissemination of content amplifies these risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves developing content that is genuinely informative and valuable to the target audience, while clearly and conspicuously disclosing any commercial relationship or sponsorship. This aligns with the ASA/CAP code, which mandates that marketing communications must be identifiable as such and not mislead. Specifically, the CIPR Code of Conduct emphasizes honesty, accuracy, and transparency in all professional dealings. By prioritizing authentic value and transparent disclosure, the PR professional upholds ethical standards and regulatory compliance, fostering trust with the audience and protecting the client's reputation. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes promotional messaging over genuine audience value, even if subtly done, risks violating the ASA/CAP code by being misleading or not clearly identifiable as marketing. For instance, presenting a product review as purely editorial when it's sponsored without clear disclosure is a direct contravention. Similarly, an approach that omits or downplays the commercial nature of content, even if the content itself has some informational merit, fails to meet the transparency requirements of both the ASA and the CIPR Code of Conduct. This lack of transparency erodes trust and can lead to ASA investigations and sanctions. Another incorrect approach would be to create content that, while appearing valuable, contains unsubstantiated claims or exaggerations about a product or service. This directly violates the ASA's requirement for marketing to be truthful and not misleading, and the CIPR emphasis on accuracy. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework that begins with understanding the target audience's needs and interests. This informs the creation of genuinely valuable content. Simultaneously, a thorough review of relevant UK regulations, particularly the ASA/CAP code concerning advertising and promotional content, and the CIPR Code of Conduct for ethical practice, must be integrated into the content strategy from inception. This involves proactive identification of potential disclosure requirements and ensuring all claims are substantiated. When in doubt, seeking clarification from regulatory bodies or legal counsel is a prudent step. The decision-making process should always prioritize transparency, accuracy, and audience benefit, with commercial objectives being met through ethical and compliant means. Question 13. Regulatory review indicates that a digital public relations campaign is generating significant engagement on social media platforms. To assess the effectiveness of the campaign, the PR team is considering various methods for tracking and analyzing performance metrics. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical best practices for social media analytics? Option A. Directly tracking individual user interactions, including likes, shares, and comments, and linking them to specific user profiles for detailed campaign attribution. Option B. Sharing raw, unaggregated user comments and direct messages with external marketing agencies for detailed qualitative analysis without obtaining explicit user consent. Option C. Focusing exclusively on vanity metrics such as total follower growth and the number of posts published, without analyzing engagement or sentiment. Option D. Utilizing aggregated and anonymized data to identify overall engagement trends, reach, and sentiment analysis across different content pieces. Correct answer is D. Utilizing aggregated and anonymized data to identify overall engagement trends, reach, and sentiment analysis across different content pieces. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the strategic use of social media analytics for performance tracking with the stringent requirements of data privacy regulations. Public relations professionals must ensure that the data collected and analyzed, even for performance metrics, does not inadvertently infringe upon individual privacy rights or violate consent protocols. Careful judgment is required to identify and implement analytics practices that are both effective and compliant. The correct approach involves utilizing aggregated and anonymized social media data for performance analysis. This method aligns with regulatory frameworks that emphasize data minimization and the protection of personal information. By focusing on overall trends, engagement rates, and reach without identifying individual users, public relations professionals can gain valuable insights into campaign effectiveness while adhering to privacy principles. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant, as it avoids the collection or processing of personally identifiable information without explicit consent or a legitimate legal basis. An approach that involves tracking individual user engagement through direct identification and linking it to specific campaign interactions without clear consent presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. This practice could violate data protection laws by processing personal data without a lawful basis, potentially leading to substantial fines and reputational damage. Furthermore, it breaches ethical PR principles by undermining trust and transparency with the audience. Another incorrect approach, which focuses solely on vanity metrics like follower count without considering engagement or conversion, fails to meet professional standards for effective performance analysis. While not directly a regulatory violation, it demonstrates a lack of strategic understanding and can lead to misallocation of resources, ultimately hindering campaign success and failing to provide actionable insights required for informed decision-making. This also indirectly relates to regulatory compliance by not demonstrating due diligence in measuring the impact of communication efforts in a responsible manner. A further incorrect approach that involves sharing raw, unaggregated user comments and direct messages with third-party analytics tools without anonymization or explicit consent is also problematic. This exposes sensitive user data and could violate data protection regulations concerning the transfer of personal data. It also fails to uphold ethical standards of confidentiality and trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a proactive risk assessment of all data collection and analysis activities. This includes understanding the specific data protection laws applicable to the target audience's jurisdiction. Professionals should prioritize anonymization and aggregation techniques, conduct regular audits of their analytics practices, and ensure that any third-party tools used are also compliant with relevant regulations. Seeking legal counsel, when in doubt about data handling practices, is also a crucial step in maintaining compliance and ethical integrity. Question 14. Consider a scenario where a pharmaceutical company is launching a new medication for a chronic condition. The public relations team is tasked with creating digital content to inform the public about the medication's benefits, potential side effects, and efficacy data. They are debating between producing a series of short, engaging social media videos highlighting patient testimonials and key benefits, creating a detailed infographic summarizing clinical trial results and dosage information, or developing a comprehensive blog post that delves into the scientific research, addresses common concerns, and provides links to the full study data. Option A. Focus primarily on a podcast interview with a key opinion leader discussing the medication's potential. Option B. Produce a series of short, engaging social media videos highlighting patient testimonials and key benefits. Option C. Develop a comprehensive blog post that delves into the scientific research, addresses common concerns, and provides links to the full study data. Option D. Create a visually appealing infographic that simplifies the clinical trial results and dosage information. Correct answer is C. Develop a comprehensive blog post that delves into the scientific research, addresses common concerns, and provides links to the full study data. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in digital public relations, adapting content formats to meet diverse audience preferences and platform requirements while adhering to ethical and regulatory standards. The professional challenge lies in balancing creative content strategy with the need for accuracy, transparency, and compliance, particularly when dealing with sensitive information or regulated industries. Careful judgment is required to select the most appropriate content type that effectively communicates the intended message without misrepresenting facts or misleading the audience. The correct approach involves prioritizing a format that allows for detailed explanation and clear attribution of sources, such as a well-researched article or a comprehensive blog post. This format is ideal because it provides space for nuance, evidence-based claims, and direct links to supporting data or expert opinions. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach ensures transparency and accountability. For instance, in many jurisdictions, claims made in public communications, especially those related to health, finance, or product efficacy, must be substantiated and verifiable. A written format facilitates this by allowing for citations and detailed explanations, minimizing the risk of misinterpretation or the spread of misinformation, which could lead to regulatory scrutiny or reputational damage. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on a short, attention-grabbing video or an infographic without providing supplementary detailed information. While these formats are excellent for engagement and summarizing key points, they often lack the depth required to convey complex or sensitive information accurately. A video might oversimplify a scientific finding or a financial product's risks, leading to audience misunderstanding. An infographic, while visually appealing, can present data in a way that is easily misinterpreted or lacks crucial context. Ethically, this can be seen as a failure of due diligence and transparency, potentially misleading the audience. Regulatory bodies often have specific guidelines on how information must be presented, and a superficial format might not meet these requirements, leading to potential violations related to false advertising, misleading claims, or inadequate disclosure. Another incorrect approach would be to use a podcast to discuss a topic that requires visual aids or detailed data representation, such as complex statistical analysis or product demonstrations. While podcasts are effective for storytelling and interviews, they are not suited for presenting information that is best understood visually or through detailed textual explanation. This can lead to confusion and an inability for the audience to fully grasp the subject matter, creating an ethical concern regarding the effective dissemination of information. The professional decision-making process should involve a thorough assessment of the message's complexity, the target audience's information needs, and the relevant regulatory landscape. Professionals should ask, what is the core message? What level of detail is required for accuracy and understanding? What are the potential risks of misinterpretation with different formats? What are the specific disclosure or substantiation requirements for this type of information in our jurisdiction? By considering these questions, practitioners can select content types that are not only engaging, but also ethically sound and legally compliant, thereby protecting both the organization and its audience. Question 15. The audit findings indicate a significant data breach affecting a substantial portion of the company's customer base, with sensitive personal information potentially compromised. The breach occurred due to a cybersecurity vulnerability that has now been identified and patched. The company's internal legal and IT teams have confirmed the extent of the breach and the type of data involved. Which of the following represents the most effective and ethically sound approach for the digital public relations team to manage this crisis? Option A. Proactively reach out to key industry influencers and partners to brief them on the situation privately, requesting their discretion and assistance in managing the narrative. Delay a broad public announcement until a more controlled and favorable communication strategy can be developed. Option B. Focus public relations efforts on highlighting the company's robust cybersecurity measures that were in place prior to the breach and emphasize that the vulnerability was an isolated and unforeseen event. Downplay the severity of the data compromised to mitigate reputational damage. Option C. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging the breach, expressing sincere regret for any inconvenience or distress caused, detailing the type of data affected, outlining the steps being taken to support affected customers, e.g., credit monitoring services, and committing to a thorough review of security protocols to prevent future incidents. This statement should be disseminated across all official digital channels and shared with relevant media outlets. Option D. Issue a brief statement confirming that a security incident occurred and that the company is investigating. Avoid disclosing specific details about the type of data compromised or the number of customers affected to prevent unnecessary panic and potential legal ramifications until a full internal assessment is complete. The correct answer is C. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging the breach, expressing sincere regret for any inconvenience or distress caused, detailing the type of data affected, outlining the steps being taken to support affected customers, e.g., credit monitoring services, and committing to a thorough review of security protocols to prevent future incidents. The statement should be disseminated across all official digital channels and shared with relevant media outlets. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate, strategic decision-making under pressure, balancing the need for transparency with the protection of the organization's reputation and legal standing. The rapid dissemination of information in the digital age means that a poorly handled crisis can escalate exponentially, causing significant damage. Careful judgment is required to navigate the complex interplay of stakeholder expectations, regulatory compliance, and ethical communication. The correct approach involves a proactive, multi-stakeholder communication strategy that prioritizes factual accuracy, empathy, and timely updates. This aligns with the principles of responsible public relations practice, emphasizing honesty and integrity in all communications. Specifically, it addresses the need to acknowledge the situation, express concern for those affected, and outline concrete steps being taken to resolve the issue and prevent recurrence. This approach fosters trust and demonstrates accountability, which are critical for long-term reputation management and adherence to ethical communication standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on damage control, without acknowledging the impact on affected parties, fails to demonstrate empathy and can be perceived as insincere or dismissive. This can lead to further public backlash and erode trust. Another incorrect approach that involves withholding information or providing vague responses can create a vacuum that is filled by speculation and misinformation, exacerbating the crisis and potentially violating disclosure obligations if material information is deliberately concealed. A third incorrect approach that involves blaming external factors without taking responsibility for internal shortcomings demonstrates a lack of accountability and can damage relationships with partners and the public. Professionals should employ a crisis communication framework that includes pre-crisis planning, identifying potential risks, developing response protocols, and establishing communication channels. Crisis response, activating the plan, assessing the situation and communicating with stakeholders, and post-crisis evaluation, analyzing the response, identifying lessons learned, and updating the plan. This structured approach ensures that decisions are made based on established protocols and ethical considerations, rather than solely on immediate reactions. Question 16. The investigation demonstrates that a public relations firm tasked with promoting a new public health initiative has developed distinct communication strategies for various digital platforms. For instance, on a short-form video platform, they utilize engaging, visually appealing clips with simplified key messages. On a professional networking site, they post more detailed articles and infographics explaining the initiative's scientific basis. However, a junior PR executive suggests that to maximize reach on the video platform, they should slightly exaggerate the potential benefits of the initiative in the video's caption and accompanying hashtags, even though the core information in the video itself remains accurate. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the firm? Option A. The firm should adopt the junior executive suggestion to slightly exaggerate benefits in captions and hashtags on the video platform to increase engagement and reach, as the core video content remains factually accurate. Option B. The firm should use the same simplified, slightly exaggerated messaging across all platforms to ensure consistency in brand voice and message delivery. Option C. Firms should decline the junior executive suggestion and instead focus on creating platform-specific content that accurately reflects the initiative's benefits and scientific basis, even if it means lower initial reach on the video platform. Option D. The firm should prioritize the junior executive's suggestion, arguing that the dynamic nature of short-form video platforms allows for more creative license with messaging to capture audience attention. The correct answer is A. The firm should adopt the junior executive's suggestion to slightly exaggerate benefits in captions and hashtags on the video platform to increase engagement and reach, as the core video content remains factually accurate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need to adapt content for different digital platforms with the overarching ethical and regulatory obligation to ensure accuracy and avoid misleading the public. The core tension lies in how to effectively tailor messaging for engagement without compromising the integrity of the information or violating specific digital communication guidelines. Careful judgment is required to navigate the nuances of platform algorithms, user expectations, and the potential for misinterpretation. The correct approach involves a nuanced understanding of each platform's strengths and audience, leading to the development of distinct content strategies that are both engaging and compliant. This means, for example, using concise, visually driven content for platforms like Instagram or TikTok, while employing more detailed, informative posts for LinkedIn or a company blog. Crucially, any adaptation must retain the core factual accuracy of the original message and avoid making unsubstantiated claims or presenting opinion as fact. This aligns with general principles of ethical communication, which demand transparency, honesty, and accuracy, and specific digital communication regulations that often mandate clear disclosure and prohibit deceptive practices. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize virality or engagement metrics above all else, leading to the sensationalization or oversimplification of complex information. This could involve using clickbait headlines that misrepresent the content, or selectively omitting crucial context to fit a platform's character limits, thereby creating a misleading impression. Such practices risk violating regulations that prohibit false or misleading advertising and could damage the organization's reputation and credibility. Another incorrect approach would be to use identical, unadapted content across all platforms, failing to leverage the unique characteristics of each. While seemingly safe from a misrepresentation standpoint, this approach is strategically flawed as it ignores platform-specific best practices and user expectations, leading to diminished engagement and effectiveness, and ultimately failing to serve the public relations objectives. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the target audience and the communication objectives for each platform. This should be followed by a review of the core message's factual basis and any relevant regulatory guidelines for digital communication. Content should then be drafted and reviewed to ensure it is both platform appropriate and ethically sound, with a specific focus on maintaining accuracy and avoiding any form of deception. A final review should confirm that the adapted content aligns with the organization's overall communication strategy and ethical standards. Question 17. The analysis reveals that a financial services firm is preparing to launch a new, complex investment product and plans to promote it heavily across social media platforms, email newsletters, and its corporate website. The marketing team has drafted promotional materials that highlight potential benefits, but are light on detailed risk disclosures, believing that extensive legal disclaimers might deter potential investors. Given the strict regulatory environment governing financial promotions in the United States, which approach best ensures compliance with legal and ethical guidelines? Option A. Omit detailed risk disclosures from the initial digital promotions to maximize investor interest and plan to provide more comprehensive information only upon direct inquiry from potential clients. Option B. Proactively engage legal counsel specializing in securities law to thoroughly review and approve all digital promotional content, including social media posts, email copy, and website text, to ensure it meets all disclosure requirements and is not misleading. Option C. Immediately publish the promotional materials across all digital channels and address any potential compliance concerns raised by regulators or the public after the launch. Option D. Rely on the marketing team's understanding of general advertising principles to ensure the content is appealing and assume that the inherent nature of digital platforms allows for a less formal approach to disclosures. The correct answer is C. Immediately publish the promotional materials across all digital channels and address any potential compliance concerns raised by regulators or the public after the launch. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a PR professional to navigate the complex intersection of digital communication, public perception, and regulatory compliance within the specific framework of U.S. federal law governing financial promotions. The pressure to quickly disseminate information about a new investment product, coupled with the inherent speed and reach of digital channels, creates a high risk of unintentional noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for timely communication with the absolute necessity of adhering to disclosure requirements and avoiding misleading statements. The correct approach involves proactively seeking legal counsel to review all digital content before publication. This is the best professional practice because it directly addresses the core regulatory requirement of ensuring that all financial promotions are fair, clear, and not misleading, as mandated by the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, enforced by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Legal review ensures that all necessary disclosures, risk warnings, and disclaimers are present and accurately reflect the product's nature and associated risks, thereby mitigating the risk of regulatory action, investor lawsuits, and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves publishing the content immediately and addressing any potential issues post-publication is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct pre-publication review directly violates the spirit and letter of securities laws, which place the onus on the issuer and its representatives to ensure compliance from the outset. The risk of disseminating misleading information or omitting crucial disclosures is extremely high, leading to potential SEC enforcement actions, fines, and injunctions. Another incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on the marketing team's understanding of compliance, is also professionally unacceptable. While marketing teams may have a general understanding of communication best practices, they are typically not equipped to interpret the nuances of complex financial regulations. This reliance creates a significant blind spot, increasing the likelihood of overlooking specific disclosure requirements or misinterpreting legal obligations, thereby exposing the organization to regulatory scrutiny. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves omitting detailed risk disclosures to make the promotion more appealing is a direct contravention of ethical guidelines and legal mandates. Financial promotions must provide a balanced view, including potential risks, to allow investors to make informed decisions. Omitting such information is not only unethical, but also a clear violation of regulations designed to protect investors, leading to severe legal and reputational consequences. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stage approach. 1. Identify the regulatory landscape relevant to the communication. 2. Consult with legal counsel specializing in financial promotions and digital media. 3. Develop content with a clear understanding of disclosure requirements. 4. Implement a robust review process involving legal and compliance teams before any digital dissemination. 5. Establish a system for monitoring and responding to feedback or potential compliance issues post-publication. Question 18. Benchmark analysis indicates that the evolution of public relations from traditional media relations to integrated digital campaigns presents significant implementation challenges for practitioners. Considering the historical context of PR's focus on earned media and controlled messaging, how should a modern digital PR strategy best address the blurred lines between owned, earned, and paid digital channels while maintaining ethical standards and regulatory compliance? Option A. Prioritize the creation of high-quality, authentic content for owned digital channels and leverage influencer marketing with clear disclosure of paid partnerships, while meticulously tracking engagement metrics to demonstrate value and adapt strategies. Option B. focus exclusively on traditional press release distribution to digital news outlets, assuming that earned media coverage remains the primary driver of public perception in the digital age. Option C. Adopt a reactive approach to social media, responding only to negative comments and inquiries to manage crises, without proactively engaging in content creation or relationship building. Option D. Emphasize paid digital advertising campaigns across all platforms to guarantee message control and reach, disregarding the historical importance of earned media and organic engagement. The correct answer is A. Prioritize the creation of high-quality, authentic content for owned digital channels and leverage influencer marketing, with clear disclosure of paid partnerships, while meticulously tracking engagement metrics to demonstrate value and adapt strategies. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a public relations practitioner to navigate the evolving landscape of digital communication while adhering to established ethical principles and regulatory frameworks. The rapid pace of technological change, the proliferation of new platforms, and the blurring lines between earned, owned, and paid media necessitate a sophisticated understanding of how historical PR practices translate to the digital age. Misinterpreting these shifts can lead to non-compliance, reputational damage, and a failure to achieve strategic communication objectives. The correct approach involves a strategic integration of historical PR principles with modern digital tactics, emphasizing transparency, authenticity, and measurable outcomes. This approach acknowledges that, while the tools and channels have changed, the core tenets of building trust, managing reputation, and fostering relationships remain paramount. Specifically, it recognizes the need to adapt traditional media relations to digital influencers, press releases to social media content, and event management to virtual experiences, all while ensuring compliance with relevant digital advertising standards and data privacy regulations. This aligns with the ethical guidelines of professional PR bodies that advocate for honesty, accuracy, and responsible communication in all media. An incorrect approach that relies solely on traditional PR methods without adapting to digital nuances would fail to reach contemporary audiences effectively and could be perceived as outdated or irrelevant. This overlooks the fundamental shift in information consumption and engagement. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes rapid digital dissemination without considering ethical implications, such as undisclosed paid endorsements or the spread of misinformation, would violate regulatory requirements concerning advertising transparency and consumer protection. Furthermore, an approach that neglects the importance of data analytics and measurement in the digital space would hinder the ability to demonstrate ROI and adapt strategies, falling short of modern PR effectiveness standards. Professionals should approach such situations by first conducting a thorough audit of existing communication strategies against current digital best practices and regulatory requirements. This involves understanding the target audience's digital behavior, identifying appropriate digital channels, and developing content that is both engaging and compliant. Continuous learning and adaptation to new technologies and regulations are crucial. A robust decision-making framework would involve assessing the potential impact of any communication strategy on reputation, stakeholder relationships, and legal compliance, prioritizing ethical considerations and measurable objectives throughout the process. Question 19. To address the challenge of ensuring visual content in digital public relations campaigns is both impactful and legally compliant, what is the most effective process for managing image and video assets? Option A. Prioritize the use of readily available visual content that appears appealing, without conducting thorough checks on its origin or permissions. Option B. Proactively verify the licensing and permissions for all visual content, ensuring explicit consent is obtained for any individuals depicted. Option C. Assume that images found through general online searches are in the public domain and can be used freely. Option D. Utilize visually striking images of recognizable individuals without seeking their explicit consent, prioritizing aesthetic impact. The correct answer is B. Proactively verify the licensing and permissions for all visual content, ensuring explicit consent is obtained for any individuals depicted. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because digital public relations requires a nuanced understanding of how visual content impacts audience perception and engagement, while simultaneously adhering to evolving legal and ethical standards. The challenge lies in balancing creative effectiveness with compliance, particularly concerning the rights and permissions associated with visual assets. Careful judgment is required to avoid legal repercussions and reputational damage. The correct approach involves proactively verifying the licensing and permissions for all visual content used. This means understanding the terms of use for stock imagery, ensuring proper attribution for user-generated content, and obtaining explicit consent for any individuals depicted in photographs or videos. This proactive stance is crucial for regulatory compliance, particularly under frameworks that govern intellectual property rights and privacy. For instance, in the U.S., copyright law protects original works of authorship, including photographs and videos, and unauthorized use can lead to infringement claims. Similarly, privacy laws like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, and the common law right of publicity can be implicated if individuals' likenesses are used without consent. By ensuring all visual content is properly licensed or has explicit permission, a PR professional mitigates legal risks and upholds ethical standards of respect for creators' rights and individuals' privacy. An incorrect approach that relies on the assumption that readily available online images are free to use is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This overlooks copyright law, which presumes that all original creative works are protected unless explicitly stated otherwise. Using such images without proper licensing constitutes copyright infringement, exposing the organization to potential lawsuits, fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that involves using images featuring recognizable individuals without obtaining their consent, even if the image itself is legally sourced, is also problematic. This violates privacy rights and the right of publicity. Individuals have a right to control the commercial use of their image. Failing to secure consent can lead to legal action from those individuals and damage the organization's reputation for ethical conduct. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes visual appeal over clarity regarding content origin or permissions is equally flawed. While aesthetics are important in digital PR, they cannot supersede legal and ethical obligations. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential consequences of using unverified or improperly sourced visual content. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic checklist for visual content. 1. Is the image original or licensed? If licensed, what are the specific terms of use? 2. If the image features identifiable individuals, has explicit consent been obtained for its intended use? 3. Is attribution required, and if so, has it been provided correctly? 4. Does the content comply with any platform-specific guidelines or advertising standards? By integrating these checks into the workflow, PR professionals can ensure that their visual content strategy is both effective and compliant. Question 20. The review process indicates that a client in the financial services sector is experiencing low online visibility for their new investment product. To improve this, the PR team is considering several SEO strategies, which approach best balances the need for improved online visibility with regulatory compliance and ethical PR practices in the financial services industry. Option A. Implement aggressive keyword stuffing in all press releases and website copy, and create meta descriptions that promise high returns, even if the product's actual performance is uncertain. Option B. Purchase a large number of backlinks from low-quality websites to quickly boost the product's search engine ranking, and use generic, non-specific language in content to avoid making specific claims that could be scrutinized. Option C. Focus on creating highly engaging, keyword-rich content that accurately describes the investment product's features and benefits, while also pursuing legitimate media placements and industry partnerships to earn authoritative backlinks. Option D. Rely solely on paid advertising campaigns to drive traffic to the product page, without investing in organic SEO efforts or content creation. The correct answer is C. Focus on creating highly engaging, keyword-rich content that accurately describes the investment product's features and benefits, while also pursuing legitimate media placements and industry partnerships to earn authoritative backlinks. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to enhance a client's online visibility through search engine optimization (SEO) for public relations efforts. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the ethical imperative of transparency and accuracy in PR communications with the technical and strategic demands of SEO. Misinterpreting or misapplying SEO tactics can lead to misleading search results, damage a client's reputation, and potentially violate regulatory guidelines concerning truthful advertising and disclosure. Careful judgment is required to ensure that SEO strategies support, rather than undermine, the integrity of PR messaging. The correct approach involves integrating SEO best practices with ethical PR principles. This means focusing on creating high-quality, relevant content that naturally incorporates keywords, building authoritative backlinks through genuine media relations and partnerships, and ensuring website technical health for better indexing. The ethical justification lies in adhering to principles of honesty and transparency. For instance, using keywords that accurately reflect the client's offerings and news, rather than employing deceptive keyword stuffing or misleading meta descriptions, aligns with the PRSA code of ethics emphasis on truth and accuracy. Similarly, earning backlinks through legitimate outreach and valuable content creation is a transparent and ethical practice, unlike purchasing links which can be seen as deceptive. An incorrect approach that prioritizes search engine rankings above all else, such as aggressively stuffing keywords into press releases or website copy without regard for readability or factual accuracy, is ethically flawed. This practice misleads both search engines and users, potentially violating regulations that prohibit deceptive advertising or misrepresentation. Another incorrect approach might involve creating misleading meta descriptions or titles that promise content not delivered, which is a direct violation of ethical communication standards and can lead to user distrust and negative brand perception. Furthermore, engaging in link schemes or purchasing backlinks, while potentially boosting rankings in the short term, is a violation of search engine guidelines and can be considered unethical as it manipulates search results through artificial means, undermining the principle of organic discovery. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance above short-term SEO gains. This involves a thorough understanding of the client's objectives, target audience, and the specific regulatory landscape governing their industry. For implementing any SEO tactic, professionals should ask, does this tactic enhance transparency and accuracy in our communication? And does this tactic comply with relevant advertising standards and disclosure requirements? If the answer to either question is uncertain or negative, the tactic should be re-evaluated or discarded. Continuous monitoring of search engine guidelines and industry best practices, coupled with a commitment to ethical PR principles, forms the foundation for effective and responsible SEO integration.